Let's talk about why healing can feel endless. If you're somebody who has been on the healing journey and it feels like you keep looping and going round and round in circle, this video is here to show you why and to just give you some insights as to how you can start to approach your healing journey a little bit differently. Because nowadays, more and more people are feeling called to heal. More and more people are looking towards self-development and towards improving their lives. As more and more information comes out about why healing is important and what that even looks like, and how someone who is unhealed is going to come up against many, many challenges throughout their lives. And so really, let's just break it down and simplify it as much as possible. When we talk about someone needing healing, and essentially all of humanity needs healing, we all need to heal our trauma because we have all been traumatized in one way or another. So if we were to define trauma, it's interesting because most people, when they think about trauma, they think about perhaps a car accident or a really terrible injury. So I like to divide trauma into two main categories. We have capital T trauma and small t trauma. So capital T trauma is what we define as sort of one very traumatic incident that can have long-term repercussions, such as a horrific car accident or a major injury, or experiencing the loss of a loved one, being hospitalized because of severe illness. That is what we can define as capital T trauma. Now, small t trauma is what I define as sort of more emotional abuse, neglect, mental abuse. And so really we have to look at it in terms of childhood, because most of us, or I even want to say all of us, are walking around with some degree of childhood trauma. Now, remember, what traumatizes a child is not the same thing that can traumatize an adult, because when we are children, our nervous system is not yet fully developed, and neither is our brain, meaning that generally until the age of about 5, children are very egocentric, and this is a normal part of human development. But what happens over time is that when children experience traumatic and challenging events when they are children, this can have way more repercussions, because this is now affecting the foundation of your life. So let's say somebody who as a child experienced the death of a loved one, or seeing a very traumatic experience, versus a child who experienced neglect or abandonment, or didn't have all their needs met, or grew up in a broken home, or grew up with their parents not always being present, or even something as simple as you wanted to have a conversation with your mother, and maybe you did a beautiful drawing and you're wanting to show your mother this drawing, and what happens? Your mother is busy, and so she says, no, not now. And because she wasn't there to listen to you, you might then have developed the belief, my mother doesn't love me, my mother doesn't care for me. And as an adult, this might not make sense, because our brain doesn't function in the same way as a child's. And so most of us are walking around with a somewhat shaky foundation because of challenging and negative experiences that we had in childhood that led to negative behavioral traits, beliefs, limiting beliefs, and so on and so forth. And so that is what we can define as trauma. And interestingly enough, research shows that somebody who has experienced sort of small t trauma over a long period of time, it can actually be worse than somebody who experiences capital T trauma just once. And research also shows that somebody who grew up in a difficult home situation, for lack of a better word, is somebody who so research shows that somebody who broke up in a somewhat broken home can actually have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And this is similar to what we see soldiers who have been to war, these are the same symptoms that we see in soldiers who have come back to war. So for a long time, because there was not enough research that was done into trauma and its effects on the human mind and the effects on our behavior and the effects on even the way we perceive and therefore behave in the world. But now, as more and more information is coming out, people are starting to see that a lot of the issues that they have in their lives are actually the side effects and consequences of trauma that they have experienced in childhood. And this is what the healing journey is about, because if we don't take time to heal and to essentially, and what healing is addressing those issues so that they are no longer controlling you, but you have control over them. And so once we take the time to deal and address with those issues and shift our behavior, because again, what's interesting that science shows in something called neuroplasticity is that the brain, no matter how old you are, can change. New neural pathways within the brain can be changed at any time. So even if you are a 60-year-old, an 80-year-old, a 90-year-old, a 30-year-old, a 50-year-old, whatever age you are, you can address the issues in your life and you can change your identity. And that is essentially what the healing journey is about. It's about becoming the version of yourself that you want to be, as opposed to the version of yourself where you are experiencing limitations, lack, challenges, issues, obstacles, whatever it may be. So coming back to why healing can feel endless, well, it's because in today's world, everything has been commercialized. Everyone is trying to make money now off of people's healings. And that, personally, I feel is extremely wrong, because one thing that the healing industry won't tell you is that the only person who can really heal you is you. Because the healing journey, first and foremost, begins with the choice to want to make a change. If you are unwilling to make changes in your life, then you will never heal. And so I've written a few notes here so why healing can feel endless is because the self-development industry and the healing world is now constantly telling you that you need to heal, you need to heal, you need to heal. And as a result of that, you begin to believe that everything about you is wrong, that you need to constantly heal, that you will never be healed. And so what that does is that you begin to build an identity that you are broken. But you are not broken. What the healing journey is about is the journey of coming back to a place of wholeness. And so healing, first of all, starts with identifying what are the core issues. Most of the time, what people do when they're on their healing journey is they will address the symptoms. And what we really need to do is to find the root cause of why you are experiencing those challenges. So let's say, for example, maybe you are somebody who has difficulty building strong relationships. Well, it could be that the root cause of that could be that in childhood you were neglected or abandoned, and therefore you developed the belief that it is not safe for me to trust, and therefore you have difficulty engaging in strong relationships. Now, most human beings won't even realize that they are emotionally unavailable. And this is why so many relationships fall apart, because people say that they want to be engaged in a relationship, but if they are not emotionally available because of traumatic experiences, such as the belief that no one will love you or the belief that no one cares about you. And a lot of the time what traumatic experiences do is that they will lead us to develop beliefs that are limiting. And what happens is once we have a certain belief, the world, the universe will constantly reflect back to us that which we believe. So if I believe that I'm not good enough, then I will continuously attract situations that continue to affirm to me that I am not good enough. So really the core of the healing journey, what we really need to be doing is identifying the limiting beliefs that we hold and change those beliefs. And we can change our beliefs every time. Just like, for example, maybe one day you believed something, but then you got new information and you were able to change that belief. So that is the same the same approach really to the healing journey. So it is not about identifying with someone who is broken, but realizing that you are on the journey of wholeness and eventually you will heal. But unfortunately, most of the information we are given about how to heal is wrong. So the next point that I've written here is that, yes, people fail to integrate what they have learned. So there are millions and millions of healing modalities out there in the world, but now the reason why people feel that they are not healing is because people seem to move from one healing modality to the other rather than sticking to one and integrating what they have learned. So I guess I have a bit of a bone to pick with the spiritual community, because the information about how to heal ourselves has been out there for a very long time. This information that I'm sharing is not new, but what happens is people have difficulty applying what they have learned, and that is always the hardest point. It is very easy to take in information, but what most people fail to do is to actually apply the information that they have learned. And so healing is a gradual process, and it is, especially because healing is about reprogramming the subconscious mind. So the subconscious mind, essentially when we look at the mind, the easiest way to compare it is to an iceberg. We have the conscious mind, which is the part of the iceberg that is outside of the water. We'll call it about 10%. And then the subconscious mind is all the iceberg that is underneath the water, and that represents about 90% of our mind. So most of our behaviors and our actions, especially when we are not thinking about them, are actually stemming from our subconscious. And so that is what the healing journey is about. It is about tapping into the subconscious and rewiring the beliefs that you hold in the subconscious. So until you start, and so the way to shift the subconscious is through repetition, repetition, repetition. And so that is why, in order to anchor in a new habit, we have to repeat it, repeat it, repeat it, repeat it, repeat it, until eventually it just becomes a habit. So think about like somebody who starts smoking. If you just started smoking, it will be very easy for you to quit. But if you're somebody who's been smoking for, say, 30 years, it's going to be a lot more difficult because you have developed the habit. And so science also shows that it is harder to break a habit and easier to build a new habit. So rather than trying to get rid of your old habits, it's better to build new habits that will eventually push aside the old habits entirely. So it is really about integrating and applying what we learn. What else have I said here? So yes, as because people just simply take in the information and do not apply it, do not take action on the information that they have received, then eventually nothing changes and they begin to believe that this modality that they've tried is not really helping. But again, healing, for change to happen, requires consistency and repetition. So if someone who's trying this thing one day, this thing the other day, and I'm not trying to bash on anyone and saying it's not good to try different things. Of course, we all have to try different things until we find the thing that works for us. But I guess right now, something for you to think about, if you are someone who feels like this journey of healing has been endless and nothing is changing, is to question for yourself, where have you been receiving information and where have you been failing to apply it? So if this content is resonating with you, then I just want to highlight that there are many different ways in which you can heal, and this is really the work that we do here at the Hanka Sisters. So you can check out the link in the description down below if you are wanting to book a consultation, to book a private session, or even to book a private retreat. So the next point I've written here as to why feeling feels endless is because so few people pay attention to the body and the nervous system. Most healing seems to focus on emotions and mental, especially when we look at just standard talk therapy. People just talk on and on and on and on about their issues, not really knowing what to do about it. And so that takes us back to the previous point about applying what we learn. And so it's not about just talking about it and understanding what happened, but it's about shifting the way we look at it. But most importantly, we have to prepare our body in order to be able to deal with these issues. So the nervous system is the foundation of our body. And so really, if we look at the best way to explain it is before the human being is, when the sperm enters the egg and the embryo starts to form, before that embryo turns into a full-fledged fetus, what we notice is that it starts off with the brain and the nervous system. And interestingly enough, if you look at a sperm, it looks like the nervous system with a head and a tail. And so the nervous system is essentially what connects our physical self to our non-physical self. So what happens is that when we experience severe trauma, or not even severe trauma, any kind of trauma, what happens is there is an overload to our nervous system. And so what happens is the nervous system is essentially the electromagnetic signals that are sent from the brain into the body to let us know something here isn't right. So when we experience a traumatic situation, what happens is there is an overload to the nervous system, and the energy of that trauma becomes trapped somewhere within your nervous system and therefore somewhere within your body. So if we don't take the time to address the blockages of energy within the nervous system, and essentially the nervous system is like the wiring of our body. So let's say you have a piece of machinery and there is a short circuit that happens to the wiring, that piece of machinery will no longer work. So that's the same thing with the nervous system. If the nervous system has some kind of short circuiting, which is what will happen every time we experience any kind of traumatic experience, therefore giving us faulty wiring, and therefore making our system, our piece of machinery, our body, not work in the best way that it can. And so unless we take time to address the nervous system and to create safety in our body, we will never really be able to release some of the emotions that are connected to that traumatic experience. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you are somebody who experienced some kind of traumatic experience. And so, okay, let's say somebody experienced somebody drowning, or you almost drowned as a child, and therefore every time you come near water, maybe you get heart palpitations, or perhaps you can be in the shallow end, but when it means going underwater, you start getting heart palpitations. So now what's happened is because the experience of that almost drowning when you were a child is still lodged somewhere within your nervous system. So until you take the time to clear out the energy of that almost drowning experience that you had, you will never be able to release the fear of water. So we have to prepare the body to feel at ease. We have to prepare the body to feel comfortable. We have to prepare the body to feel safe so that we can start addressing those issues. Because if we don't feel safe, that's why if we don't feel safe in our body, what can happen is once we start talking about some of these negative and difficult and traumatic experiences that we had, then it can feel very overwhelming, and essentially we just want to hide and we want to run away. And that is why we develop coping mechanisms, because we do not feel comfortable or safe enough within our body to be able to deal or to address the underlying emotions that are connected to the trauma that we experienced, and therefore we will never be able to address it. We will constantly want to run away and do other things. So whether the coping mechanisms, smoking or drinking or eating or trying to run away, making ourselves busy working, or doing all kinds of things in order to escape actually dealing with whatever it is that we are feeling. So the next point that I have here is that, yes, you have identified with rather than seeing it as a healing journey, you have identified with your trauma. So you still hold the belief that you are wounded or broken. So as long as you keep believing that you are unhealed, that you are traumatized, and this is the problem with when someone is constantly like, oh, I'm broken, I'm broken, I'm broken. Oh, I need to heal, I need to heal, I need to heal. Oh, it's never going to be enough. We have to be aware that the things we tell ourselves are programming our beliefs, and therefore how we interact with the world and how we perceive the world. And so it's important to reframe your beliefs and not identify with the fact that you are a broken person, but to change that belief. And rather than saying, I am broken, I will never heal, is to say, I am on my journey of healing. I am moving towards wholeness. I am moving towards being a better version of myself. I am in the process of healing. Because yes, the healing journey can feel overwhelming. And let's just be honest, is once we start scratching away at one issue, a lot of the time that can lead way to other issues, because healing is like a web and everything within us is interconnected. And as I said at the start of this video, what we really need to do is to identify the root cause of the issues and challenges that we are having in our lives. And most of the time, it will be trauma. I want to even say 100% of the time, it will be trauma, because what trauma does is that it leads us to change the way we think. It changes our beliefs and therefore changes our identity. But we can change our identity at any time. But we first have to reframe the way in which we look at things. So, I would be interested in hearing what has been keeping you stuck on your journey. What do you feel, if you were to identify one pattern that keeps recurring, one thing that keeps you looping round and round in circles? I would love to hear from that, and perhaps I can help you address it and give you some pointers as to how you can reframe the way you're looking at that thing and start to approach it in a different way. But if there's really anything that you take away from this video, to really start changing whatever it is that you have been working on, whatever it is that you have been trying to address and that you feel is not shifting, the number one thing that you can really start to do is deal with your nervous system. So even just taking time to breathe deeply, taking time to ground yourself. And these things might feel very simplistic and they might feel like, oh, nothing is happening, this can't be this easy, but it really is that easy. But as I said at the beginning of the video, it requires consistency and repetition, and the more you stick to it, the more you will start to experience changes. But the problem with us as human beings is, especially as we live in this world of instant gratification, we are constantly wanting to move on to the next thing, because we as a human collective now have a very short attention span. It can be boring to do the same thing over and over and over because we want the change to happen now. We want instant gratification. But the more you stick to it, the more you are consistent, the more you repeat the same thing over and over again, you will begin to see those changes. So stick at it, and I promise you, the changes that you desire are on their way to you now. Just trust that you are not broken, you are on the journey of becoming whole once more, and you are transforming to become a better version of yourself.